Hi folks, in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to identify sentence fragments. Sometimes when we're looking at our own writing, we might have a hard time telling whether we've got a complete sentence or whether we've got a sentence fragment that we might need to do something with to make it complete. So I'm going to show you two tests today for finding out if you've got a sentence fragment or a complete sentence. You will know that it is not a fragment if it has a verb and a subject, and if you add "it is true that" to the beginning of the sentence, it still makes sense. If your text passes both of those tests, then you know you have a complete sentence on your hands and not a sentence fragment. So let's take a look and see if we can apply this to some examples. Mr. Gandolfi watches 30 horror movies every October. Let's try the first test. Can you spot the verb, the action word, or the state of being word? If you chose watches, that is the verb. Now, the subject is who or what does the verb in the sentence. So who or what watches 30 horror movies every October? See if you can spot the subject. If you said the subject is Mr. Gandolfi, then you would be correct. So we know that this text has a verb and a subject, therefore it passes our first test. But we're not done yet. We need to see if it also passes the second test. Let's try adding "it is true that" to the beginning of this text to see if it still makes sense. It is true that Mr. Gandolfi watches 30 horror movies every October. That still makes sense. So that passes our second test. Because it passes both tests, we know that this is a complete sentence, and we don't need to do anything to correct it at this point. Let's try another example. What about this one? Mr. Gandolfi is a huge fan of horror movies. Can you spot the verb and the subject? If you said is the verb and Mr. Gandolfi is the subject, you would be correct. Is a state of being verb. Mr. Gandolfi is who or what is in this sentence, therefore it passes the first test. Let's try the second test. It is true that Mr. Gandolfi is a huge fan of horror movies. What do you think? Does this still make sense? I think it does, which means this passes both of our tests and is another complete sentence. Let's try a third example. Leaves skittering across the pavement as sunset. Let's look to see if this has a verb and a subject. Leaves is a noun, and skittering is an action. So it seems like we've got a subject and a verb, but when I read this, it seems like something might be missing. So I'm just going to mark this with a question mark. I'm not 100% sure if this is really a subject and a verb or not. Let's move on to the next test to see if that helps us out any. Let's add "it is true that" to the beginning of this sentence, or this text. It is true that leaves skittering across the pavement as the sun set. This doesn't seem like it makes sense. It sounds like there's a missing word, and so it doesn't pass our second test, which means that "leaves skittering across the pavement as sunset" is a sentence fragment. We might need to do something to revise this to make it a complete sentence, or we might need to make sure that we're being intentional about how we're using that. More information on both of those in future videos. Let's look at another example. Students diving over the tables trying to get the book they wanted. Let's try the first test. Does it have a verb and a subject? Again, we've got diving as our verb. Who or what diving? Students. Still, it seems like a word might be missing, so I'm going to mark that one with a question mark again. Let's try adding "it is true that." It is true that students diving over the tables trying to get the book they wanted. It almost sounds unfinished, like there's something that needs to come after the end, after the period in that text to make it make sense. So it doesn't make sense. We have another sentence fragment. So again, let's review the two tests for finding out whether we've got a complete sentence or a sentence fragment. It's not a fragment if it has a verb and a subject, and if you add "it is true that" to the beginning, it still makes sense. A complete sentence passes both tests. In our next video, you'll get a chance to see how to correct a sentence to make it complete when you've got a sentence fragment.